This is the famous Hayrick's opal mine, first discovered by Joe Kinnear in 1929. This mine produced beautiful black boulder opal and is found in the southwestern section of Queensland. A view of some of the old disused tunnels in the mine. Looking over top of the old dump now, this dump is some 70-odd foot high, and in its heyday a semi-trailer could be backed around on top of it. The mine was worked through the Depression years, elapsed for a few years during the war period of World War II, and was worked again then up to about 1962-63. This is the old water tank, supplied the water for the mine. Rust and a few bullets from tourists have made a mess of the tank. It used to fill off top of the mountain from a good storm. It took about 20 minutes. These rocks are cappings off top of the mountain. The mountain has a hard capping on it, a mud capping as the miners call it. This overlays the sandstone in which the boulder is carried. And this capping has broken and weathered away, as we can see some of it roll down of the flat itself below the mountain. And just some of the old machinery which is left laying around the mine since work has deceased. As we can see, this dump is quite large for an opal mine. We believe this to be the biggest opal mine in Australia. It's quite a shame that the opal had to be sold during the Depression when all things were sold cheap. Steady there, boys, you might get away on you. Yes, opal from this mine was sold as low as 50 pounds per kerosene case during the Depression years. That's 8 gallons, very hard to believe today. Possibly those 8 gallons today of this beautiful black boulder opal would cut in the vicinity of about $60,000 or $70,000 worth of opal, and there was many cases sold. There was even one 44-gallon drum sold, which went overseas and was sold in London.
Those prices are 1966
when
prices.
it hit the London market, it was proclaimed to be the brightest opal ever to reach the London market. These are visitors noodling the dump. The dump has quite a lot of colour in it yet. Bits and pieces of material which was not good enough to keep and hold during the days it was worked. But unless you know the owners, this mine is still under lease and you cannot poach on it. That's a view of the old cutting shed there, where most of the opal from the mine was cut in the latter years. We can see the top of the mountain now and the rock capping, which we was talking about a little while back. We can see how it overlays the sandstone. The view of the dump there is some 70-odd foot high. That dump is approximately 70 foot up from the flat, and the mine itself is about 125 foot down from the top. There's about 1 mile of workings in this mine, a lot of drives all hooked up together. Most of them was walkable. In other words, we could walk around in them, not like most opal mines, which are usually gouge holes where a man has to crawl about. As we can see on the right-hand side, the mountain comes around in a U shape. Most of the early film was taking off the top of the mountain there on the right-hand side of this film. We have travelled west now to the Aramanga district. Here we are at the Lucky Day mine. This is only a recent working which has produced quite a lot of good opal. Nobody's quite sure what come out of this mine. It's boulder, nice boulder opal. There are stories at about 24,000 pounds, $48,000 in today's currency come out of this mine, worked 2 or 3 years ago. This mine was worked by machinery, as can be seen. This mine is also under lease at the moment and is being worked by miners. We have seen some of the opal and have handled some of the opal that come from this particular mine, and the good material is of gem quality. The miners here are discussing possibilities of further work in various directions. We can see test holes around about the actual open cut, and all believe that the potential of this mine is still very, very great. This mine is about 30 miles west of Arramanga. Arramanga is right in the heart of the opal country. Here we have a buyer. He's visiting one of the miners in this district. This come from another mine about 2 miles from the last mine we just seen. He's actually buying a boulder here. We can see him handing the money over, and the miner counting the 10-pound notes, or $20 bills as we say today. This mine is not named yet, and we believe this boulder will be the first production out of it. This is a scene inside the new mine from which the boulder came. Another scene from outside the mine. We can see that they started work by open cutting on the level and now have started to drive underground. One of the men here are holding up a piece of boulder with quite a lot of potch on it. They produce many boulders out of this mine, most carrying common opal. And to date, only the one boulder carrying precious opal has been mined. We can see the colour of the sandstone here is quite yellow. This varies tremendously different. This varies depending on the area in Queensland and is quite different in colour in many, many places. As can be seen, this mine is in a little gorge in among the flat top hills, and just across the other side of the gorge, the men have also worked on a boulder level. We can see recent work here, and also if we look hard on the left-hand side there in the yellow material, we can see a boulder protruding. This side of the gorge was very hard, the level, and so the men were very reluctant to work here without equipment. Have a close-up of the boulder in the level. The level is actually a silicous type of sandstone, or kaolinic silicous sandstone, a mixture of all, and in this case is set very hard, as can be seen by the dust flying off the pick. Notice the red sandstone over top of that particular level. This is another miner we met in this area. Here is about a mile south of the last mine we just seen. German Georgie is known amongst the men, and of course we met this man years ago at Lightning Ridge, from whence we come. We have travelled now about another mile or two east of the position we was in to the Little Wonder. This is a famous name amongst opal mines in Australia. This mine played no small part in making the Australian opal famous. It was this mine, the Stony Creek and Breakfast Creek, the opal from these three mines was first to put the Australian opal on the map. Another view of the Little Wonder here. We can see the massive amount of work which has been done, but it was magnificent opal. Mr. Wollaston, Tully Wollaston, one of our early opal buyers, was the man who marketed the opal from this particular area. Yes, it was the Queensland opal that first made Australian opal famous. Tully Williston, he was the man who had done all the hard work in marketing the Australian opal. He marketed Queensland, then White Cliffs was next to follow. He done the hard work there in getting it going. Also Lightning Ridge and the South Australian opal. Just general scenes around the Little Wonder and the various mines to be found in this district. Here we see another miner walking down to his camp. Actually two of them, but the man in the front is the man we just visited. We done a little business with him. He had some boulder opal to sell us. It's quite nice opal. He walked into his camp to bring it out. The vehicle we done our travelling in, a VW Combi, done a mighty job out in this country too. I'm afraid we didn't see the boulder on the film, but some of it was quite nice. On our way back into Aramanga along the 30-mile track, we passed the Yellow Knell, so we decided to go in and take a few photos and a little film of the Yellow Knell just for record's sake. Here we see the Yellow Knell. There's very little known about it. We do know from the records at the Mines Department some nice opal was produced. A man by the name of Joe Bridle and Carney Jimmy done quite a bit of work here. Actually, it was Joe Bridle and Carney Jimmy, plus the syndicate, that done most of the work at the Little Wonder also. As can be seen on these films, there's still great potential left in this particular area for mining, but you sure need some sharp picks as the country is very, very hard. As mentioned before, Joe Bridle was one of the early opal miners in this country. It is often said that Joe Bridle found the Little Wonder, but this is not the case. A man by the name of Johnson found the Little Wonder and sold his first parcel for £1,000 to Tully Williston. Bridle was a member of the syndicate, which later purchased the Little Wonder and done the great bulk of the work. Notice the hills in the background, many gorges and little ridges. Throughout of these hills are scattered many, many prospects, but one must have very good equipment to come into this country or it is very easy to perish. At night time we camp, light a fire with the old famous Gidgee wood. This particular wood, the old Gidgee, is a very fierce burner, but also a slow burner with it. Releases tremendous heat and makes camp quite comfortable of a night. In the morning, the old lonely crow had to put his beak in and see what was going on. This is a nice piece of what we call semi-boulder opal. This came from the Bull Creek workings. Quite a nice piece of opal, not black and not light, in between. The Bull Creek workings here, these workings were found very early in the opal mining history of Queensland. The records tell us that about £3,000 was produced worth of opal in those days. We also know that opal those days brought about 6 shillings an ounce for good quality material, so that could mean a lot of money in today's language. There's about 15 acres of extensive working on this area. Here we see the owner of the property on which the mines are, Mr. Colburn on the left, and a partner of his who have taken the mine up in lease and have put a bulldozer on to work it. Hence some of the boulder opal we've just seen on the film. These workings are very, very interesting. The ground was very hard, the sandstone extremely silicate, very tight and flinty. And the amount of work that was done here indicates that under the very hard and trying conditions, beautiful opal must have been obtained. Sometimes telltale stories can be obtained from old miners' camps. So we see the boys here specking around the old camps, the traces of opal or any other thing that may be of interest that may tell or enlighten a little about the past history of the field. Bull Creek is situated somewhere in the vicinity of 40 miles northwest of Quilpie and is very easily obtainable by the highway. The Windora Beef Road is known to the people out there. from Quilpie, but we must warn all people that this mine at the moment is held under lease. The bulldozer is pulling down the old workings, which are quite shallow. Very few of them go any more than 15 feet, and removing the pillars, and some magnificent opal has been produced. We ventured underground at Bull Creek. We do know that these workings are over 60 years old, and to our amazement they're standing up quite firm. Notice on the floor on the left-hand side of the screen the thick layers of sand. This is the sandstone has spread it away and deposited on the floor up to about a 6 foot, about a foot thick. This has been the home of bats over the years. This is red sandstone at Bull Creek, which carries the boulder, and the boulders are isolated throughout the sandstone, not usually on a very common level at all. One may be high and one may be low. The records state that the sandstone has not been pierced to the level here at Bull Creek, but we do believe in later years that miners did pierce it and apparently found no appreciable opal down there. Now we've travelled many, many miles north. We're on an old workings here called Daylight. This was another form of boulder, a little different to the type we've been looking at. This is the matrix boulder, and was taken out to this old mine by our guide here, Mr. Fred Craig. Some bulldozer boys had been onto this old mine with a bulldozer and pushed it around, and we believe got about 200 or 300 weight of possible good matrix. The Land Rover in front belongs to our guide, Mr. Fred Craig, and he's leading us out into the hills along an old oil borer's road to show us some old mines worked many, many years ago. This area of country we are in now is some 100 miles northwest of Junda, way out in the Warblington Run. On the way along, we run into a dingo trap. This man is a dogger, a dingo catcher, to make the term a little easier for the city folk to understand. And one of his traps had been sprung by a kangaroo, and his sharp eyes had noticed it as we was driving along. Here we see the toe of the kangaroo, which was caught in the dog trap. The kangaroo got away, of course, and now he's going to give us a demonstration on how a dingo trap is set. Just take note how solid the jaws are on these traps. You'll also notice on the left-hand side of the screen, under his shoe, is a little piece of rag. Inside of this rag is some strychnine. This is the bait to poison the dogs, to save them agony, and so they won't get away. Because the man, we can see the rag there now, and in that strychnine, in that rag is wrapped up strychnine, and this may save the dog many, many days of agony, as a man may not get back to his trap for a week or a fortnight after he sets it. Sometimes they might be 20 or 30 miles out in the hill from his camp. We've travelled on now, have come to a rock hole in this country, which is quite scarce. Storms have previously filled up these rock holes. The Land Rover got across all right, but the VW couldn't get through the mud, so our guide takes us further up the creek to show us a crossing. Notice how agile our guide is. It takes a young man quite an effort to keep up with him walking. In fact, most of them have to get along at it jogging. This is an extremely interesting country, beautiful opal country. The country itself has a splendour about it for those who love the rugged inlandness of Australia. Another view of the rock hole. It's a beautiful scene here, beautiful water. The country is nice and red, though dry and arid. We expect this in Opal country, but the colour is magnificent. So further into the hills we go, following the old oil borers road. Notice this country is completely void of life to be seen. As we go along, we pass an old mine on the left-hand side and poke further and further out into the mulga scrub. We've left the oil borers road and we're following Mustard's tracks and any other tracks that we can find along the way, and we come to a place called Gum Creek. This Gum Creek is a famous old matrix mine. I'm very sorry we didn't photograph any of the mine. The mine actually is on the left-hand side of the film, only 50 or 60 yards away, the tail end of the mine. We thought possibly that some sandstone may have continued on down here, so one of us decided to dig a little shaft to find out. Most of these workings here are very shallow, but much to our sorrow, the sandstone did not continue, and without this specific type of sandstone, there's no matrix or boulder to be found underneath it. One of the many bad crossings the VW Combi had to go over on this trip up north into the Queensland Opal country. Just another bad crossing. The Land Rover goes across in four-wheel drive, pulls over very easily. Now watch the Combi as it comes along behind. She done a magnificent job under very trying conditions. Of course, the great ground clearance was the secret. Notice the front wheel even leaves the ground. Travelled on here to another little matrix mine, this mine had no name, so we named it the Green Show, basically because all the matrix we mined was green.
This is the boss himself there at the Green Show. Going to do a little bit of work.
The opal dirt underneath the sandstone, which has been shovelled out now and is quite soft.
We had a little bit of trouble with the soundtrack there.
The nodules which carry the opal. This is not like the boulder opal, the sandstone boulder opal, I should say, the big brother of this material, which is usually found in the sandstone up above the opal dirt. Even though this is a small workings, the potential here is still great for those who like low-grade or amateur material. Our guide has just dug out a little nodule. They're quite plentiful when you get onto the patches of them, like spuds as you may term, and he showed us how they're split open with a tommy oar. closer view of one. Notice how one hit with a tomahawk, and off it comes. See the green colour flashing through the back end. Now we'll snip the other end to see if the colour goes right through. Of course, if this was gem quality material, such large lumps would not be cut off. Even the cameraman done a little work here. Note the dish in behind him. All the nodules in that dish, boulder nodules, represent about 1 hour's work. When digging them out of the soft dirt, one has to chip very, very gently because it's quite easily to cut them in halves with a sharp pick, as they're quite green when they're fresh. They're very easily snipped when they're green or when they're fresh as you first dig them out, but let them stay out the ground for 3 or 4 days. They become quite brittle and they shatter when hit with a tomahawk. But if cut while green with a tomahawk, they'll cut quite clean and straight. A view of the general country in this area. Notice the mulga trees are not green. Mulga trees are actually grey, silvery grey, and this film actually brings out their true colour. In fact, I'd say the colour of this film at the moment would be about spot on with the colour of the country. At night time, we put a little black ball of electricity around our camp. We light the spinifex on the windward side of our camp, and this burns quite freely and lights things up. No one's afraid of setting the whole countryside on fire, as the spinifex is all in clumps and soon burns out, but nevertheless looks very nice of a night.
Spoil my act as a clown. I had it made up not to make a frown, but a little bit of tear let me down. When you said you were leaving tomorrow, that today was our last day.
This is just another of the many bad crossings. Notice the driver had a look here just to make sure he had the clearance, but these vehicles have about 11-inch ground clearance, and she done quite a good job. That was Quart Pot Creek. And we move over onto the famous Quart Pot mines. These mines were discovered by our guide's father, George Craig, well back before the turn of the century. And they were to produce some fabulous opal.
I said I'd laugh when you left me, full of funny as you went out the door. that I'd have another one waiting.
It's good to come onto these old mines in the hills, unspoilt by man's hand like most mines are around modern or workable opal fields today, such as Lightning Ridge and White Cliff, South Australia, and various other places where we can get at. But out in the hills, to come across these old mines, not spoilt, not touched, plenty of colour and plenty of posh laying around, is quite nice to see. We've moved further north now from the Quart Pot mines. We've come on to the Craig Boulder mine. This mine also was discovered by our guide's father, way back before the turn of the century. George Craig was a famous name in the opal country those days, one of the most famous of all prospectors in this district. This particular mine was a boulder show, and his father got some magnificent boulder opal here. We camped on the mine and travel on a little further through the hills. The going is very rough. Just gives us a general idea what the country is like out here, Western Queensland, amongst the opal. We've moved on to another boulder show. The men with the bulldozer put their machine in here. Whether they got any opal or not, we don't know. But they missed a matrix lead, a new one, which has never been worked, shedding out around the side of the hill, and only trained eyes can pick these leads up. And our guide has picked this lead up here, and we believe that this particular lead is worth a hit with the blade, as the saying goes, of the machine, as it could lead into something good.
We travel on now towards Mainside Station. Here's one of the many denuded hills that's out in this flat and barren country. The track here is a well-used one. Miners now are using it quite frequently to go into the Yellow Jimmy and various other areas that's been worked in the district. We stop off at the Yellow Jimmy on the way over to Mainside and have a chat here with the miners and a general look around the mine itself. The Yellow Jimmy is a famous old mine. It's actually named after a yellow bullock that used to run up a creek, and they named the creek the Yellow Jimmy Creek after the bullock, and hence the mine was named also after the bullock because it was on the edge of the Yellow Jimmy Creek. Here's a man working in the area also. He has a little machinery here and is producing some nice boulder opal. A general view of the work on his lease. We can see the mullock heaps behind his camp, and quite some earth has been moved. Now on the Yellow Jimmy proper, this is the old mine itself. We can see it's worked around the foot of a mountain and also out onto a flat, which we shall see in a moment. Beautiful opal here. This wasn't boulder opal, incidentally. This was beautiful pipe opal, sandstone opal. Actually, the lead, we believe, was first found out on the flat, and the miners followed it up until it went in under the mountain, and the level continues through the mountain. This type of opal, if procurable today, which it is not incidentally, top quality, is worth a king's ransom. Just a little chat with the miners before we moved on. We knew one of the chappies leaning on the Land Rover there, and of course, made it. On the way again, our water supplies got very low here, and so we had to leave the beaten track and go into a billabong or a backwash of a creek to replenish our supplies. And believe me, the going was pretty rough and tough, and one had to know where they were going. Just look at that old combi bounce over them bumps. We're backtracking our tracks back out now, and you notice our tracks on the ground there. Very few come in here. Actually, there's no road at all through this scrub, and if one don't know where they're going, they can certainly perish in this country. Yes, this is not the country for the average person. One must have a guide or know exactly where they're going if they want to come out of it alive on some occasions. Back on the beaten track and towards Mainside. Here at Mainside Station, we're talking to Mrs. Marta, the owner of the property, before we move on, heading further west to the Minerici mines. After travelling some distance, we're on the Minerici mines now. These mines were first discovered by our guide's father, Mr. George Craig, in the year 1897. He first found the opals shooting out on the surface, and of course they just worked the lead down into shallow country. Somewhere about 3 foot deep, our guide tells us the ground was, and they got a tremendous amount of opal. One parcel filled the legs of a pair of old dungaree pants, which they threw across the pummel of a horse and took over to the miners, the opal buyers at Opalton, to sell. This is where the bulk of the opal come from. Only shallow ground, 2 or 3 feet, and our guide's shown us some of the locations. Actually, he tells us to the left-hand side there, and a little bit off the run, which was worked, there's possibilities of the lead continuing. Who knows, only for the want of a little work. Just a general walk around the workings. Of course, a considerable amount of more work has been done since his father left here. Other people have opened up other areas. Here we are at a beautiful rock hole. Magnificent water, crystal clear and beautiful to drink. This is the rock hole our guide hadn't been to for some 40 years, and he took us straight to it, about a half a mile in the hills behind the Minarichi mines. Actually, it was on our way over to some other mines known as the Little Minarichi. He also had not visited that area for some 40 years, and he gives us a demonstration of real bushmanship. He took us through the hills, through the spinifex, through the ridges and straight onto the mines. A remarkable bit of bushmanship and memory. The going was quite rough for the old combi, and she had to pick her way over the rocks and through the anthills to cross over our creek on which the rock hole was, but I'm afraid we didn't get the old VW much further than this. The going was too heavy and too thick for her. Remnants of the old miners' camps are always of interest. Relics, bits and pieces, bits of potch and colour and opal chips give us some indication of the type of material they got. Now our guide's leading out here, taking us down to the Little Minarichi mines, heading out through the hills. He's a very brisk walker, this man, and us younger men were flat out keeping up with him, but he seemed to know exactly where he was going, even after 40 years. To me, every mulga tree and gidgee tree and ridge seemed the same. But not to our guide. Yes, after 40 years through dense mulga, scrub, gidgee trees, spinifex, he walked straight out onto these mines. And here they are, they were there all right, the Little Minarichi. Nobody hesitates to drop a match in the spinifex. It's only in clumps and does quite a good job. In fact, if you ever come out into this country and you wander away from your vehicle, make sure, of course, your vehicle's in a safe spot. Drop a match behind you in the spinifex here and there, and you'll leave a smoke trail, and there's not much chance of you getting lost. You can look back and see the way you've come. This is a very, very good thing for those who are not bushmen, who do not know the country and are not sure of their positions. After our visit to the Little Minarichi, we head back to the BW on the creek and the rock hole. This is just about the end of our films, folks. We do hope you enjoyed the little trip around the northern sections of the old opal fields in Queensland. So we'll say bye-bye for now. Is in the Cunnamulla mineral field area. This is a famous old opal mining field, the Yowie. In fact, it was one of the first opal fields ever in Australia. Just as the sign reads, Miner's Mailbox, 6 miles to the fields. And on the fields we are here, this is the Gidgee Patch. This patch is held under lease by the 2 people in the foreground there, Jean and Don Walters. The people we see in the background are visitors and tourists, plus friends, and they're ragging down the old dumps after pieces of matrix and opal that the early day miners left behind. The alley opal field would not be big as far as some of the opal fields go. Possibly between 100 and 200 acres at a maximum has been worked, all told. There we've seen Gene Wallace pick up a piece of matrix and put in a tin, another piece apparently by the looks of it. Don, in a moment, finds quite a nice piece, but unfortunately the camera cannot reproduce it well. We see him in a few moments pick it up. This was quite a beautiful piece of matrix. Quite unfortunate we couldn't get it to come out on the film. This area is commonly known as Evans Claim, but it is registered with the Mines Department as the Great Extended. It was a lease, actually. Mr. Evans found this area when deepening an old prospect shaft and put down a number of shafts and opened up into quite a big field. Mr. Evans then formed a company with a Mr. Tully, a Mr. Cornworth and a Mr. Wollaston. Incidentally, Mr. Wollaston was the man who put all the Australian opal from the various fields on the market throughout the world. He was the man that put the early Queensland opal on the map. He put White Cliffs, Lightning Ridge and the South Australian. He's the man that done the hard work. Of course, many other dealers and buyers followed behind his track to expand on his openings. Most of the work taking place on the Yowie today, with very few exceptions, is pulling down the old dumps and treating them in various forms and ways for material lost and left behind by the early miners. This gentleman shows us a couple of pieces of nice opal which he hasn't just dug out. He gave them a wash to make them a little clean so we could see what they look like, to give us some idea of the type of material that he is getting here on the Evans Claim. Here's one man sinking a shaft or pulling the windlass here, pulling the bucket. So we still see a little bit of underground work is taking place here also. This is a view of the flat, known today to the miners as Whiskey Flat, but the old-time miners it was known as the Old Flat. Possibly the first workings done on the hour was done here. Just another view of some of the old flat workings. About 5 or 6 acres, all told, would pull them all up. Just some of the methods used by the visitors and miners on the alley for separating the dirt, looking for chips of matrix and opal. A general view of the Southern Cross workings. This was a famous working. It was also a lease. It was the first lease actually taken out in Queensland, we believe, on opal. It was taken up by a Mr. Bond. It was actually first discovered in the year 1883. It was worked very successful up to the death of the manager of the mines. It is wrote up in the records that one dividend was paid before his death, and after his death, works seem to have ceased. Nothing like putting Mum to work on the shovel, and she's given us quite a good demonstration here. The Yowie Opal Fields is quite a haven for the tourists. This is the place for the tourists to come to. Very, very few people ever leave here without a little bit of matrix or opal that they noodle or find or rake out of the dumps. It has many advantages for the tourists over most opal fields. There's a beautiful bore that runs right through the centre of the fields, and so there's a supply of nice fresh water. This is quite an attraction. Actually, the field is about 60 miles by road from Ulo. The road is quite good, actually. The Walters working another claim they have on a section of the Southern Cross. Pull up the dirt, noodle it through. Actually, they're going through old work dirt. What actually takes place is the miners and the residents on the field open up whole shafts. It's commonly called pulling a shaft to the miner, and in this case, the Walters opened this old shaft on the Southern Cross and found it was a grave. It could possibly have been the manager of the original workings. Police was called in on this occasion and the grave was closed down. Just another of the many methods used in separating the mollick and any pieces of matrix that may be in amongst it. Somehow or other the cameraman got in the film here and he's walking around the grave, the top of the grave on the Southern Cross. This is one of the very few mines on the Yowie Opal field being worked underground. Here we have a very, very plain view, an idea of exactly how these Yowie nuts, as they are termed, or little boulders about as big as one's fist, are formed. As can be seen, they lay in a belt, or in a bed, in the sandstone itself, and form a common level which dips up and down. They don't all carry matrix or opal. Of course, if they did, we know it'd be worthless, because just by the amount of them which there are. But when these beds of nuts or boulders dip away into a low level, it's here we expect to find matrix or opal. This will give you some idea just what it looks like in an opal miner's mine. Actually, the sandstone itself is quite soft, the underlaying and overlaying sandstone, and can be picked very easily. But the band of boulders seem to be cemented together with an ironstone solution. Just a view down one of the drives There's about 250 foot of tunnel in this particular mine. This mine is situated on the field known as Brandy Gully. This is another section of the Yowie Opal field. The miner, his name is Ted Pigram, quite a nice chap, and he's pointing out here various things about the nuts and the boulders, explaining how the dip takes place, and when they dip away, how the opal is expected to be caught on these lower ebbs. Notice behind him that dip of the band, well, just in this section where he is now, produced some very nice material, and there's a very spectacular view of a dip as he walks past it there, how the band has left its common level and gone down into a dip. Now he's pointing out some floaters here. These are big boulders, actually. They're underlaying, as he's pointing out, they're underlaying the standard band of matrix or Yowie nuts.
This film was taken sometime in 1967 or thereabouts.
What they look like. They look like quite a conglomeration, but when taken out, they come out in solid little nuts, segregated, of course. They're just like a man's fist. Like all mining, a lot of mullock is made and it has to be cleaned out. This gentleman has got a unique little system of his own. He works by himself and he has no mate. This mine's about 40 foot deep and he pulls all his own dirt, as we shall see very soon. Dipped into a 48-gallon drum, a square drum actually, which we shall see at a later date. Just a little look around the opal field now, in general, particularly at the camps. The camps are basically all along the bore drain, which is on the left-hand side of this film. We didn't quite get it into the picture. Just another one of the camps. Miners live reasonably rough, but make themselves quite comfortable. Plenty of room on this field for anybody who feels energetic and wishes to put down new shafts, so there's many untried areas. We even have a hand washing machine here, a lady at work with it. Camp and home of Don and Jean Walters. Here they are, meeting the cameraman himself. Somehow or other the camera's running along there and taking the film. These people mainly supply the lavatory clubs throughout Australia with material in the form of the ironstone matrix. we're back with our friend, Mr. Ted Pigram, who's ready to pull up his big 48-gallon drum of mullock, which he's just mined. Please note the way he does it. He's got a cable hooked onto the front of that old Chev utility, and he backs back with just taking the weight of the drum now. That's how heavy it is. See how it made the old utility bounce? He backs back to a predetermined distance, actually onto a little log with his back wheels. Of course, as he goes back, up comes the drum. We shall see a unique way of emptying it in a moment. Actually has a guy rope running out there onto another pole, and he pushes the drum out. It has a trapdoor bottom. We'll see him pull the pin out of the trapdoor in a moment and dip and dump this 48 gallon of dirt, which is quite a few hundredweight of dirt, or mullock as the miner calls it. He does this about 4 times a day. This is just about bye-bye to the Opal field, and we hope that you have learned just a little about the field, what conditions are like up there, and someday you may venture to have a look at it. Here we see a beautiful black opal. This particular stone came from the Lightning Ridge fields in New South Wales, so before we go on our Queensland safari, we'll have a look at this lovely stone. This black opal was sold in the year 1966 for $1,800 on the Lightning Ridge field. It was sold to an American buyer. The weight of this particular stone was 8.70 carats. Now on our Queensland safari, here we see one of the cars moving along the Bollen Road, heading west towards Charleville. Out of the windscreen of the car, we see the red soil as we drive along. Usually there's many miles between petrol houses in this country, so one has to carry spare petrol. The signpost says Charleville, 130 miles, so off to Charleville we go. We turn away to the right, and so off to Charleville we go. Just a view of the road between Bollen and Charleville. This red country has its interest to all travellers. Here we see one of the cars crossing a gully